Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. He is an American advocate for health insurance payment reform. He is former health insurance industry executive, a communication director. He is a New York Times bestselling author of Nation on the Take, How Big Money Corrupts Our Democracy and What We Can Do About It. And the second book, Deadly Spin, an insurance company insider speaks out on how. A critic of HMOs and the tactics used by health insurers, Wendell Potter is one of our leading national advocates for major reforms of the health insurance industry, including a supporter of Medicare for All and universal health care. He is a voice that every American must hear. Wendell Potter, welcome to Politics Done Right.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on again.
Let me tell you, I think more than ever, especially today, we're a few days away from the 7th. People need to learn a whole lot about what Medicare is, what Medicare Advantage is as well, and how insurance companies are corrupting what Medicare was supposed to be. So my first question to you is, why did we ever need Medicare, just traditional Medicare?
We needed it because insurance companies were just not interested in selling health insurance people to senior citizens, people as they got older. If they were charging premiums so high that people just couldn't afford it. So we had a real crisis of senior citizens being deep in poverty in many cases. Only a small number of our senior citizens were able to buy health insurance at that time. So you have an enormous number of people who had reached 65 or older who just didn't have any insurance at all. That was why. And it's because, again, insurance companies were just not interested in selling them anything because they knew that as you get older, you're more likely to need more care. And so they just pretty much blackball people.
Now, how did we pay for this? In other words, one of the reasons that the insurance companies didn't sell to the people of elderly is, again, it costs too much. The people couldn't afford it. So the government created a particular way to pay for it that actually works. So what was that?
Yeah, and it's a publicly funded program, has been since its inception. That means it's funded with our money that we pay in taxes in one form or another. And we have, if we work, we notice that we have deductions from our paycheck that goes to the Medicare Trust Fund that builds up over the years. So as we're of working age, we pay into that. And then when we reach retirement age, it's there for us. We pay for this in our earlier years and take advantage of it. If we live to be that old, if we reach our mid-60s, it's there for us.
Now, what that means then is what the insurance companies couldn't pay for because, again, it was more individualized. Because we did it as a collective, we were able to collect enough money from the entire society to pay for the health care of all of us as we get older. Something that went from let's call it, from the able-bodied to the not so able-bodied, correct?
That's right. In fact, it's basically the system that works around the world and actually worked initially for a brief period of time in this country. Our system of health insurance began in the late 1920s, early 1930s on the West Coast with Kaiser Permanente and its system of integrated care, which was kind of the forerunner of HMOs, and what was the forerunner of the Blue Cross system in Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas. And the health insurance at that time was what's called community rating. Everybody, regardless of age or health, paid the same amount of money. And that worked until big insurance companies saw an opportunity to come into the market and make money by siphoning off younger and healthier people into away from that, and so that destroyed the whole concept of community rating.
Now, the reason I wanted to start there is I wanted people to understand how Medicare came into being. The private sector refused to cover people. The government, we the people, found a way in which we could collectively take care of people. So now there was a funding mechanism, as you just explained, even tried earlier on with Kaiser as well, a tried and true mechanism that worked successfully.
Yeah.
Now, what is your expertise? You were what we called for quite some time the whistleblower for insurance companies. Tell us a little bit about that, because when I move into Medicare Advantage, I want to use some of that as you being the authority on the subject.
Yeah, I worked inside the insurance industry for 20 years. It was not my first career. I was a newspaper reporter, a journalist in my first career, but I was kind of lured into public relations work because it's a higher paying profession generally. And I wound up doing quite well. And I was recruited first to work for Humana, which is a very large insurance company. And I was there for 4 years. And then from there, I was recruited to Cigna, and I was there for more than 15 years. So altogether, about 2 decades working inside two of the biggest insurance companies. They're both for-profit. They're both listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And I got a great education of what that really means to people who are enrolled in these plans and what it means to our healthcare system. Like I said, in the early years of the last century, and from 1929 to into the 30s, there were very few for-profit insurance companies. In fact, almost all of the Blue Cross plans operated on a nonprofit basis until the 1990s, and then some of them began converting to for-profit status. So a lot of people don't realize that, and not so many years ago, health insurance in this country was on a nonprofit basis, but now it's been taken over by these companies like Cigna and Humana and United Health Group and Aetna, which is owned by CVS, and a few others. There are 7 large for-profit corporations that control both the Medicare Advantage business and commercial insurance. So we are kind of captive in this system now, and we're our healthcare system, and certainly our system of health insurance, is controlled by Wall Street. I saw that up close during my time at Cigna, because one of my responsibilities was to handle financial communications. I had to know all about how the company made money and where it went, and who really are the most important stakeholders for the company. And it became abundantly clear that the most important stakeholder for these companies are investors, institutional investors, and a small number of Wall Street financial analysts. They're the ones that the CEO and the CFO pay most attention to, and they worship it at the New York Stock Exchange.
So, what does that mean for the average recipient of healthcare services from an insurance company? What does that mean to them? How does the insurance company then make its money?
Well, they make their money because there is, for most of us, no Medicare that's available to us. So it's the only game in town for those of us who are not eligible for a Medicare or Medicaid program or a VA program. So the vast majority of Americans have to get insurance from one of these companies, or so, there are still a few remaining nonprofit health plans, including a few nonprofit blues plans. But what people need to understand is that what Wall Street wants is not what we need. Wall Street wants these companies to pay less and less on our claims and to refuse more care, to deny more care year in and year out. Because the less these companies pay in claims, the more money is left over to reward those shareholders, to make them richer, to enhance the value of their shares. So that's what it's all about. And that's why you see so many people these days not getting the care that they need. They're not getting the care that they need because insurance companies are engaging in a practice called prior authorization, in which they will overrule what your doctor says you need and will refuse to cover medically necessary care. Often is not an outright denial as much as it is a delay. And in many cases, that's just as bad because if you're sick, you need, in many cases, care right away. You can't afford not to get care right away. But they also make you pay a lot of money out of your own pocket before your coverage kicks in these days. Not only do we have to pay thousands of dollars every year in premiums, but they now make you pay hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars out of your own pocket before your coverage kicks in. So that's a deterrent from people even using their health insurance. They can't use it because they can't afford to meet those deductibles. They don't have the money to pay out of pocket. So they're paying good money in premiums for something they really can't use. Often they have no choice. They get sick. They have to go to the emergency room. They get admitted to the hospital, and then they're hit with these enormous out-of-pocket expenses. So it's and another thing that is increasingly a practice within this industry is restricting our access to doctors and hospitals of our choice. They're increasingly narrowing their networks. They call it narrowing their networks by kicking more and more doctors and hospitals out of their networks. So we have fewer choices. So every year we're paying more and more for our health insurance and getting less and less for it.
Okay, now centralize it on Medicare versus Medicare Advantage. You explained earlier at the beginning of the program how Medicare works, how it was paid for. Traditional Medicare, well, why don't you tell us what's the difference between traditional Medicare and Medicare Advantage? And then we'll go into exactly why people should refrain from Medicare Advantage.
Yeah, Medicare, it's also called original Medicare or traditional Medicare, differs in very important ways from Medicare Advantage and from commercial plans. The Medicare Advantage plans, it's important to understand, it's not Medicare, it's Medicare replacement. It's called Medicare Advantage, but in many cases, it certainly is not an advantage. It's something that the industry was able to get lawmakers to go along with and call it that. And they've been fooling people for now many, many years, thinking that there is some real advantage to these plans. And yes, sometimes you pay less, but you never understand what the downsides are. But first of all, back to traditional Medicare. It rarely ever uses prior authorization. You almost never get a denial from the Medicare program. It is publicly funded and publicly administrated, so the administrative costs are very, very, very low. There are no networks. Almost every doctor and hospital that practices in this country is a part of Medicare. They want to participate, so they meet certain requirements to be able to do that. So we have access to almost unlimited doctors and hospitals in this country, regardless of where we live. We can go, I'm in Philadelphia, I could, if I need care and want to get care in California, I can do that, and it'll be covered. That is not the case with Medicare Advantage. They often will refuse to pay for medically necessary care. They will often exclude the doctors and hospitals that we want to use. And if you inadvertently or knowingly go out of network, you can pay an enormous amount of money out of your own pocket for that care. So they never tell you these things. You never see these things mentioned in their advertising. And so they're able to lure people into these plans. And people don't even realize until it's frankly too late when they get sick and they realize that, my health insurer is refusing to pay for care that might save my life, might free me of pain, might I might not have access to a center of excellence or a doctor that's renowned. I may not even be able to go out of my state to get care, or in many cases, outside my county. People don't understand how restrictive these plans really are.
Now, when we talk about restrictions as well, isn't it true that if you also make the mistake to go into Medicare Advantage, getting out of it, if you decide it just isn't for you, it is almost impossible. Well, not all impossible, but very difficult to move back to traditional Medicare?
It is. It's not prohibited, but it's very difficult and it can be quite expensive. The rules are that when you become Medicare eligible, you can also buy a Medicare supplement policy. One of the downsides of traditional Medicare is the fact that it is based on insurance policies that were prevalent at the time that paid for 80% of care, and you had to pay for 20%. Back in the 1960s, that was prevalent, and healthcare was a lot less expensive than it is now. So 20% of the hospital bill in 1965 was a heck of a lot less, even adjusted for inflation, than it is now. So it's important for people, if they can afford it, and they enroll in traditional or original Medicare, which I encourage everyone to do when you have that option. And everyone has that option. But it's important, if you can afford it, to get a Medicare supplement policy to cover those out-of-pockets. I've been in Medicare, original Medicare for several years now. I pay for a Medicare supplement policy, and I never have an out-of-pocket expense. All these years, I've never paid a penny out of pocket because I have this supplement policy. But it can be expensive, and people, as they get older, they're usually on fixed incomes, or many of them are. And so they see that as something that they either can't afford, or they look at Medicare Advantage and they say, well, that's a bargain. I can enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan. And they just don't pay attention to those downsides. But you can, if you are in a Medicare Advantage plan, you can leave it. But the problem is you may have a difficult time getting an affordable Medicare supplement policy. When you're first eligible for Medicare for the first 6 months, you can buy a Medicare supplement policy without going through medical underwriting. So you don't have to disclose that you've got a pre-existing condition or anything like that. But if you enroll in Medicare Advantage first and are in that plan for, say, a year, you're going to be, if you try to go back in traditional Medicare, you can, but you may have a challenging time finding an affordable Medicare supplement policy, because then you are subject to medical underwriting. And if you've got a pre-existing condition, you may have to pay considerably more for your Medicare supplement policy than you would have if you had gotten it when you were first eligible for Medicare.
Now, Wendell, isn't it true also that as far as what it costs the government on a per person basis, Medicare Advantage is the government puts out a lot more for Medicare Advantage than traditional Medicare?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Insurance companies will claim that it's a more cost-effective way of providing care to Medicare enrollees or Medicare beneficiaries. That is absolutely not true. There have been many, many, many studies that have shown that it's far more expensive. It was created under the pretense that it would save taxpayers money. And the government wouldn't have to spend as much money. It has done exactly the opposite of that, because studies have shown that every Medicare Advantage enrollee, on average, the government spends about $2,000 more a year than they would if that person was in traditional Medicare. So it's very cost ineffective. It's actually depleting the Medicare trust fund, because it's far more costly than traditional Medicare.
It almost seems like if we got rid of Medicare Advantage and put that extra money we give to Medicare Advantage into eliminating that 20% that 20% supplement, it'll actually be more cost effective.
Oh, it'd be far more cost effective. And not only that, but these companies, that participate in the Medicare Advantage program, these private insurers like Humana, like United Healthcare, like Aetna, they are cheating the government by rigging a part of the Medicare Advantage program that enables them to grab billions of dollars.
Explain that, because I think there's a method that they have, like 2 or 3 tiers the way they bill the government per person, and they try to make it sicker for the government, but less sick for what they're really paying, something to that effect?
Yeah, here's the game. Uh, Initially, in the private Medicare business, the insurers were trying to avoid enrolling people who were sick, who had a pre-existing condition. We had something going on that was referred to as cherry picking and lemon dropping. These companies would go to great lengths to try to choose only the youngest and healthiest people to enroll in their Medicare Advantage plans. And if they made a mistake, if they enrolled people who had medical needs, they often would try to get rid of them. And that was called lemon dropping, canceling their policies, running them off. So Congress said, well, let's try to fix that. Let's assure these private insurance companies that we will pay them more for their sick patients than we have in the past. So when that was created, it created something called the risk scoring system. The government did, so that, for example, if I had diabetes, I don't, but if I had diabetes, I would be the government would pay my insurance company more, my Medicare Advantage company more, because I have diabetes. What the insurers have done is manufacture illnesses for a lot of people, and it's called manipulating this risk scoring system. And it's been estimated by MedPAC, which is the entity that advises the federal government on Medicare, that this year alone, the government will be overpaying these companies at least $84 billion
For 1 year.
For 1 year. Some estimates are considerably higher than that. I've seen estimates of $140 billion a year. We're talking about 1 year now. If you look over 10 years, you're talking over $1 trillion that we are wasting. We're spending on these companies, giving them money that they're not entitled to because of the way they're cheating us.
And that goes right into the pockets of the shareholders and the bonuses.
Yeah,
so it's a wealth transfer. One last question. What I know you support Medicare for all. How do we get there? How do we start working on, first of all, getting people to realize that Medicare Advantage is just not an advantage for them? I know you've been doing a lot of work with the newsletter that you have, which we're going to put in the blog as well. You have a great newsletter, Healthcare Uncovered. Great newsletter, Healthcare Uncovered on Substack. That's a learning experience when you go over to that Substack. But please tell us, what can we do?
Well, part of it is what you and I are doing, which is educating the public, and we can't rely on the traditional media to do that work for us for a variety of reasons. Increasingly, though, reporters are covering Medicare Advantage in ways that they haven't before, but we need to make sure people understand how they're getting swindled by big insurance companies, where our money goes, whether we're paying premiums or taxes. They're using our money, and you're right, it's wealth transfer from us to already wealthy shareholders. So a lot of the things we have to do is foundational. We need to stop some of the things that's going on right now to keep Medicare Advantage from being even more involved in our lives and taking more and more money from the government. We need to expose, as we do, how these companies behave. So my goal, and the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, is to make these companies toxic for politicians, for shareholders. I don't want politicians to take any money from these companies or their trade associations. I don't want people to invest in these companies. So we've got to do that work. And we've got to help people do a better job than we've done in the past of helping people understand the benefits of improving and expanding the Medicare program to cover all of us. We've tried that. We've not done as good a job as we need to because the insurance industry, and I know this from having worked there, they're really, really, really good at scaring people, at lying, at misleading us. So we've got to anticipate what they're going to be doing, be ready for it the next time the stars align. And I think we will have that opportunity. We need to have national political leaders who stand up for it, who campaign on it. And we need to support candidates at all levels who support expanding and improving and expanding the Medicare program.
Now, the last question I always ask is, what should I have asked you that I forgot to ask you or that I didn't ask?
Just about how big these corporations are. We're talking about mega corporations that not only these days provide insurance, but they're getting deeper and deeper into healthcare delivery. United Healthcare is just one part of this giant corporation called United Health Group that encompasses over nearly 3,000 subsidiaries. Most of them are physician practices and clinics. So they're not just insurance companies. They are getting deeper and deeper into healthcare delivery, which means that even if we're not enrolled in one of their health plans, we're still going to have to pay them money in some way. So they've gotten deeper into our lives. And United Health Group is the third largest company in America now in terms of revenue. So I want people to know these are massive. And Donald Trump got it right a few days ago. He called them big, bad, money-sucking companies. And that's one thing I agree with him on. At least he's saying it, and I'm saying that more and more people who identify as Republicans are beginning to see this. We've just got to tell this story more and more.
Wendell Potter, Healthcare Uncovered is the newsletter. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Let's go to Peggy Lopez, one of our great folks out of California. How you doing, Peggy? I haven't heard from you in a while. You were in Mexico for some time.
Yes, I was. I was in Mexico for a while. And recently, I got pneumonia.
Oh, I hope you're okay now.
No, I'm in rehab right now. That one of the little pneumonia buggers chewed a hole in the sac around my heart.
Oh.
And right now I'm alive because Trump has not cut out all that money from the medical system, because we have a little tiny hospital in the rural area where I live, and it has a helicopter. So I showed up at the emergency. They stuck me in the helicopter, flew me off to a trauma hospital, did surgery. I was in intensive care for about a week, and now I'm in rehab back home. You know, I've heard on your show the other day, the caller talked about how he had fallen. Everybody rushed to help him. And when I was in the hospital, there was a woman in the room with me who was from Fiji. She was flying from Alaska to Fiji, had a stroke, I guess, over the town where I was. And they landed her and sent her to that trauma unit and treated her. And then her family flew in and helped her get home. And there was never any issue of her citizenship, of her medical insurance. And I hate to see us lose that.
Let me tell you, every country in the OECD and every country that I know around the world, from Panama to Costa Rica to, if anybody gets ill like that, they're taken care of. I mean, it's just humanity. And you're so right. But I want to cover two things with you. First of all, your testimony is important. In your rural town, you still had a helicopter subsidized by more than likely the different medical programs in the United States, many of which now are cut by Donald Trump. Likely, your rural hospital and many others will either be gone completely or lose the ability to do what they did to save your life. So here you go, America. That's a real testimony from Peggy Lopez on something that was life and death for her. Second item. Yesterday, we had a call from one of our resident MAGA callers here in Houston, who the only thing on his mind when it came to all the cuts that Donald Trump made to the medical system was to claim that That's good. He doesn't want his money going towards illegal aliens, and that these cuts, which many Democrats are trying to restore, and one of them is for emergency rooms to be able to take care of whoever lands near death, harmed, broken limbs in an emergency room, to be able to do the thing that humanity demands for those who are Christians, the things that Jesus demands for those who are of whatever religion. If you remember, in the Muslim religion, nobody goes hungry. For all of those people who claim these religions and somehow has issue with Democrats fighting for, if somebody gets into an emergency room, as explained by Peggy Lopez yesterday with a lady from Fiji, should she have just been left to die? That is what we have allowed in our system, folks. Understand that. Peggy, I am so happy. I hadn't heard from you in a while. I can see why. I'm so happy that you're recovering, because, America needs not only your testimony, but America needs you. Anything else we need to say, Peggy?
Yeah, I'm going to have a little disagreement about the Constitution written by and for the patriarchy. And we still live under that patriarchal system, even though our Constitution has invited the rest of us in. The patriarchy right now is fighting to get us out.
And Peggy, there's no disagreement with us at all. In fact, I think when you heard me talk about Ken Burns, and I asked Jimmy, I hope that it takes into a consideration that only 5% of Americans were driven or got the protection in effect from that Constitution, and that, however, the structures are there to change that. Let me give one example, Peggy, and you please tell me if you agree, disagree, or whatever. And tell me, please. I think the patriarchy continues because too many that are not part of the patriarchy has allowed it to continue. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure allow is the word.
Okay.
I think that they are groomed to be patriarchal.
I accept. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think that's your job. It's my job to probably groom. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, like I always say, we have the smartest callers, the smartest listeners, the most engaged ones. Thank you, sis. Anything else you want to add?
It's just good to hear your voice and talk to you.
Look, it's great hearing you. And you, look, please, you get better and drop me a line. Send me a pic. I want to see that. Is the hair still pink?
No, now it's all white.
Oh, it's white now. Okay. All right.
I'm going into my true octogenarian person.
Well, you never looked octogenarian, you never acted octogenarian, and you never sounded octogenarian. So thank you so kindly, and you have a wonderful rest of your day, sis.
You too.
All right. Take care. Look, Peggy and us go back for decades from the time Politics Done Right. I think we actually go back from when Politics Done Right used to be called Liberal Politics Done Right, and we changed the name because of Coffee Party into just Politics Done Right to make sure that we were not singling out everybody. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Today, I'm honored to have a good friend of mine, a professor, Dr. John Theis, who is a political science professor at a major college here in Texas. Professor, thank you so kindly for being here on Politics Done Right.
Hey, my pleasure, Egberto.
Today, we are going to be discussing freedom. We're going to be discussing what occurred recently in South Korea when martial law was declared and how it applies to what we are going through right now in the United States of America. And there's no one more competent and qualified to discuss this subject than Dr. John Theis. So, Dr. Theis, thank you so kindly for being here with us.
No problem.
John, you're over there in Korea. What are you doing out there? I kind of woke you up early.
So I had a semester of leave that I had accrued. So I decided to come and spend the semester here following up on. So in 2023, I was awarded a Fulbright fellowship and came to Korea and taught for a semester. And I liked it so much that when I had another semester I could take, I decided to come back.
Well, that is great. Well, I want to get right to the punchline. Many people in the United States believe that Donald Trump, the current president of the United States, is marching towards creating a platform to declare martial law or some sort thereof. Now, recently in Korea, last year, in fact, there was a president that kind of followed some of what Donald Trump is doing, and he was summarily rebuffed. Why don't you kind of tell us how South Korea got there and how they mitigated that reality?
So Yoon Suk-yeol was the president. He was elected as the president of the People's Power Party, which is the conservative party here in Korea. And they had midterm elections, and the opposition Democratic Party won a majority of seats in the legislature. And the Democratic Party was not behaving the way the president wanted. So on December 3rd, I woke up in the States with the news that Yoon had declared martial law. And so I watched his talk, his speech, why he was declaring it, and it just echoed all the things. So just a little background, I had grown up in Korea from 1962 to 1980. So I experienced martial law under Park Chung-hee and Chun Doo-hwan, two presidents then. I lived through a coup d'etat in 1979, a lot of pro-democracy protests in the 70s, early 80s. So I had seen presidents declare martial law before, and what Yoon was saying when he declared martial law was simply exactly what Park Chung-hee and Chun Doo-hwan had said before, that there were communist influences in the opposition party. I can understand Yoon's frustration. He was trying to get a budget passed, and the opposition party wouldn't pass the budget that he wanted. And so he basically saw it as a way to get the control of the country that he couldn't have with the legislature in the opposition party hands. So he declared martial law. Literally within an hour, people were in the streets. The National Assembly is on Yeouido Island. It's estimated there were 200,000 to 300,000 people came out. This is now in the middle of the night. Yoon tried to get the military to take over the National Assembly because in South Korea, if a president declares martial law, after the experiences that they had, the National Assembly can force him to take back the martial law. So the National Assembly was trying to meet. The place was surrounded by soldiers. A couple 100,000 Koreans came out. And the National Assembly was able to meet. They voted to tell Yoon to get rid of martial law, to undeclare martial law, which Yoon ultimately did about 6 hours after he declared it. But then, of course, there were calls for his impeachment for carrying out an act that was clearly out of bounds.
Right.
I mean, I think, you know some of my work in Kingwood, and the work with deliberative dialogues, the work with public achievement, the various projects that I do are always aimed at getting people left and right working together to solve problems in their community, to talk about issues in their community. That's because I think democracy is really about compromise. And we have to be able to talk to each other to find out where the common ground is, to find out where the compromises can be. And in Korea, the opposition and the gut ruling party under Yoon, they weren't willing to compromise. And Yoon tried martial law as a way to simply get its power, and it backfired. And so I was actually in Korea last Christmas for about a month, when all this was going on, and there were massive protests in the streets, about 200,000 people demanding the impeachment of Yoon. The legislature voted once. They didn't quite get enough votes. Then on the second time, they were able to impeach him. That then sent it to a constitutional court to decide if he would be removed from office. That decision was handed down in January, maybe February. Anyway, in the beginning of the year. And so Yoon was removed, and then they held another presidential election in June, where Lee Jae-myung from the Democratic Party was elected president. Yoon is now facing trial for treason for declaring martial law. When I heard his announcement, I thought there's no way the Korean people are going to stand for this. Remember, they had to fight for democracy, to get democracy from dictators. And sure enough, they didn't. Now, to be clear, there were some pro-Yoon, pro-president protesters. So when the impeachment trials or votes were going on when I was in Korea, there were a couple 100,000 in front of the National Assembly urging impeachment, and there were about 20,000 in another part of Seoul urging Yoon to stay and protesting against impeachment. So it's never monolithic, but the overwhelming number of people supported the impeachment and removal of Yoon for declaring martial law. And I just think Yoon wasn't willing to compromise on the priorities that he had. So he thought martial law was a better way to get what he wanted done. And of course, Yoon had grown up with martial law just like I had. So he thought, I can do this. This is what other people have done.
Now, let's look at parallels now between what occurred in Korea and what is occurring here in the United States. It seems to me like Donald Trump is toying with the idea. He's laying, not necessarily that he's going to do it, but he's laying a foundation that in case he does it, just maybe he hopes it succeeds. Two questions then. Do you think he will do it? Well, three questions, that is. Do you think he will do it? Do you think our own military would consider that a legitimate order? And three, do you think the Americans, the populace at large, has what it takes, as the South Koreans did, to actually save their democracy?
So, one, I don't think he would do it. I think it'll be more subtle. I'm disturbed by him wanting to send National Guard troops into cities over the objection of the governors and the mayors and even the police departments of those states and those cities. That's not a proper role for the federal government. So Portland, LA, Chicago, you and I live in a big city. It's not a crime-infested hellhole that people who don't live in the big city think cities are, okay? Crime rates have been going down. I think a lot of that is sort of manufactured to give a justification. And, Trump, the Department of Defense just ordered the state National Guards to create these rapid mobilization deployment forces, 500 people. I'm really more concerned about under the guise of election integrity or keeping elections safe, they post National Guard troops in heavily Democratic areas, have ICE agents there to take away anybody that might happen to not look like me. Which is a very effective way of suppressing the vote. And that ends up keeping the House in Democratic or in Republican hands. I think that's the way it'll probably go. Declaring outright martial law would, I think, be a step too far. I think the American people wouldn't stand for it. Now, having said that, America is a much bigger country, and there are a lot of people that just think Donald Trump can do no wrong. And one of the things that I think, so there's a really good book by a political scientist named Murray Edelman, who talked about the symbolic uses of politics. And he said, for some people, politics is about getting things. Okay. So Jeff Bezos wants contracts from the Pentagon for his web service, and Elon Musk wants to sell NASA his services, and Palantir wants to make money from dealing
espionage.
With federal data. Yeah. So for some people, politics like that is immediate. It's personal, and they behave very rationally. But for most of us, politics is something distant. It doesn't affect our lives directly on a day-to-day basis in the same way. So most people in America are working, are trying to spend time with their family, are engaged in their daily lives, and politics becomes something distant that they participate in once every 2 or 4 years, maybe in a protest here and there. And so politics is not a rational activity, it's emotional, it's about symbols. And Donald Trump is very effectively sold about a third of the American population a set of symbols that he's going to save them from the urban decay and urban blight and the violence in cities. He's going to save them from the illegal immigrant hordes crossing the border to take their jobs and take their benefits from government and access their free health care and all that. And so those are emotional feelings that people have. So I think if Donald Trump does try to do martial law, a large chunk of the American people will come out in the streets. I don't think the military would fire on American citizens. But I also don't think that Donald Trump cares much if citizens go out on the street. You saw his reaction to the No Kings protest, dumping shit on people on his AI video. So that's what he thinks of citizens. And so I think he just hunkered down and waited out and hoped that people have to go back to work and go back to their lives. And, you arrest the instigators and the leaders and hope everybody else goes back. So I'm not sure how it would end up. I think the people would not want to stand for martial law, at least a large percentage of them. But there's a big chunk that would say that's good. That's what we need. These liberals, these leftists need to be put in their place.
Now, ultimately speaking, you talk a little bit about the election. Do you think that ultimately the voter suppression that he's likely to try with both ICE and the Border Patrol and others will fail, or do you think that may actually succeed in letting them hold on to the House?
I think there's a lot of disgust with Trump and his policies. So, but with the gerrymandering, it's going to be close, It's hard to say either way.
Let me tell you, gerrymandering is a two-edged sword. In order to get those other districts, they have to dilute their Republican districts that are already there. In a close election or in an election where Donald Trump is going to inflict a lot of pain on just about every demographic except the rich. And when I say demographic, I'm not talking ethnically necessarily, but class and wide.
Sure.
Right. Don't you think that this urge to gerrymander Florida, Texas, and Indiana could actually backfire?
It could backfire, especially with a candidate like James Talrico, if he ends up being the Democratic nominee, because he has a very good message to working class.
Right. It's interesting that you brought up Talrico, because a lot of folks are looking at many others, and I have actually come down to believe that the electable Democrat in this race, in this year, in this time, based on his own personal realities, both medically and otherwise, working class medically and otherwise, including a bit of religiosity, it seems to me like he fits Texas like a glove. Your thoughts on that?
I think he does. I mean, I think Talrico's a progressive Christian who provides a counterweight to the Christian nationalism of Abbott and Patrick and so many of these other people in Texas. He gives Christians an alternative view, and that's really important. I mean, and you and I have had discussions in the past. I think running as a progressive with a strong message to working class people that it's bread and butter, and you stay away from the issues of gender identity and those sorts of things. Every human being has a right to basic civil rights, regardless of their gender identity, sexual orientation, or anything. But elections should be fought on the pocketbook issues, the bread and butter issues of the economy, and progressives have a good message on that.
Absolutely. So, well, look, Dr. Theis, I'm going to close it down here on this particular issue. I want to thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right to discuss this most present issue.
Well, my pleasure to be here.
CDC, you must no longer listen to the CDC until we reform the CDC with intelligent people who follow science. But for right now, the CDC is a clear and present danger to the health of the American people.
If you go looking on the CDC website for information on vaccines and autism, you're going to see something that experts say is dangerous. In an update made Wednesday, the website still says that vaccines do not cause autism, but right above it, there is, I guess, a disclaimer that claim is not evidence-based. Joining us, Dr. Dimitri Dasalakis, an infectious disease doctor who resigned from the CDC in August. He was the director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. Wow. What do you make of this?
Well, it's why I resigned. So I think that what we're seeing is CDC weaponized, CDC being a wolf in sheep's clothing that is now promoting conspiratorial theories that have been debunked now for decades, and making it CDC's, in effect, party line. So I'm seeing what a chaos agent, which is RFK Jr., can do to the health of kids, and that is going to be extremely bad.
A lot of that is just the semantics of it. It's not evidence-based. What are they trying to say, that the link between vaccines and autism is not evidence-based? Yeah,
they're just trying to create confusion. So, I think what we know is that vaccines do not cause autism. So that is what everyone in America should know. Vaccines do not cause autism.
That is the evidence we have, and that's what it says.
That is the evidence we have, and that is what it says. So the rest of it is just trying to create chaos and confusion, and frankly, to speak things that the secretary has wanted to do for 20, 30 years into being without having to even define proof. There's nothing in that document that's new. They are quoting parts of studies, cherry picking parts, miscategorizing them and distorting them to create confusion so people don't know what to do. So take his advice and don't listen to him. He says, do not listen to his medical advice. I agree with that. Talk to your pediatrician.
If you are a parent and you're worried about this, and you look at the CDC and you look at social media and you understand that the evidence shows you that the vaccines don't cause autism, that's what your logical brain says. There's an emotional aspect as well, and you're worried. How do you get past that? How do you push past that worry, that emotional response?
And I think that parents have a very important relationship with their kids and their pediatrician. I think that it's only natural to be worried, especially when you see so much confusion being sowed. So I think that, the bottom line is trust your pediatrician, trust the experts, ask them the question, what do you think about vaccines and autism? Today, the American Academy of Pediatricians released a statement that says exactly what I just said. The vaccines do not cause autism. And so I think that it is natural to have an emotional reaction because everybody wants the best for our kids. The way to figure out what's the best for your kids is to go to a trusted source. And I'm sad to say today, today that I don't consider CDC a trusted source on this topic anymore.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Can you trust the CDC?
I think that the answer is, given the behavior that you're seeing and, CDC becoming co-opted by people who are using it to communicate inaccuracies, my answer is no. At this stage, you cannot trust that information and you should not trust that information. Again, your pediatrician, the real experts are the ones to go to rather than people who decide to cherry pick data and create documents that are scientifically at best dubious, if not damaging, to try to convince people of inaccuracies, truly achieve a different goal, which is to destabilize the vaccines and to ultimately profit off of what could potentially be litigation. I think that this is actually victimizing parents of autistic children and giving them information that is incorrect. So don't believe this information. Don't believe CDC. Talk to your pediatrician.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Look, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump, and all their ilk, their claim was they wanted to destroy the administrative state. There's a reason for an administrative state, so that we can do certain things collectively that we cannot do alone. They have destroyed many of the government structures. The judiciary, to some extent, is still holding. But the fact that we can no longer trust the NIH, we can no longer trust the CDC, we can no longer trust the employment reports that are coming out, we can no longer trust the inflation reports that are coming out. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding that we have to do because these people have decided to corrupt government to such an extent that nothing that comes out of the Trump administration can be trusted. And to rebuild that after we carve all these people out, when we get sanity, whether Democratic and Republican sanity as they come back. Because I tell you, when we rebuild, I want to be rebuilt with Democrats and Republicans, good Republicans. When I say good Republicans, I mean fact-based Republicans, and there are those. I want there to be a plethora of valid information coming from all over. I want to see an America that is moving forward, not with some one ideology, but with smart thinking, with smart base ideology. We have a government that cannot be trusted, must not be trusted, and we have to make sure that in 2026, we elect a government of and by the people, a progressive government, one moving us forward, one that is going to do what is necessary. And it starts with you. We cannot buy in to the failure these guys have created. It's going to take us a decade to clean up the mess that these guys have thrown up upon us. But you know what? You got to start somewhere. And even as it takes 10 years or so to recover, remember, every year it will get better. But we must get these animals out of this. I shouldn't say this, immorals out of office, and we must rebuild. Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willis. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise,